Stories that captivate our hearts and minds. Stories that mirror the complexities and the beauty of our world today. Stories that map the geographies of our country. And stories that impact our lives with their evocative explorations of deeply personal human experiences. Today, we honor 10 such stories as the longlist for the JCB Prize for Literature 2024. Thank you to Jerry Pinto, the chair for jury for 2024, for his literary sensibilities, precise observations, and for gently steering the jury through the reading process. To Deepthi Sasidharan, who with her keen eye for cultural narratives, sinks her teeth deep into every book. To Shaunak Sen for seeing through characters and plots with an unparalleled lens, and for his series of literary t-shirts that brought much joy to the deliberations. To Tridip Sarud for his intellectual depth and incisive comments, and for the innumerable literary references. To Aki Thami, whose crisp and fresh reactions are akin to today's reader, and for her audacious insights into societal patterns. Over the past few months, the jury has tirelessly read and reread, dissected and debated for countless hours, as they often changed each other's minds about the books they read. And they did it with a smile on their faces even while discussing the gravest of books. To the ever-growing community of writers, translators, and publishers, I can only say thank you. You bring so much joy and a desire to keep reading and discovering the worlds you create. Now, to unveil the longlist for the JCB Prize for Literature 2024, I'm handing over to the jury.
It was my pleasure and privilege to be the chairman of the jury for the JCB Prize for Literature this year. Not since the MA have you ever had such a wonderful and various list of books to read, and to read them with the intention of finding the one that we thought was the best of the crop. I had a great time reading. It's one of my favorite pastimes. And this year I can truly say I've read the best of what India has produced in English and in translation in this year. The first book I'd like to talk about is Radhika OBrien's Of Mothers and Other Perishables. They say you shouldn't judge a book by its title, but I really enjoyed the title. I liked the title. It attracted me to the book, and I found that the book was a very finely crafted attempt at merging genres. So we had a kind of ghost story, a narrator who was talking from the afterlife. It attracted me to the book, and I found that we had a love story and we had a satire on the world of commerce and advertising, skillfully segueing one into the other. What's not to like about a book like that? The second book I'd like to bring to your attention is Kinfam Singh Nonkinri's The Distaste of the Earth. The Distaste of the Earth is also one of those difficult books to classify because it takes into its broad and capacious and ambitious sweep both the local and the immediate and the detailing of local culture and a bar. And it then expands its ambit to sweep up mythology, love stories, aperçus about society. Truly, it is a novel to come back to and to relish.
The first book that I'm talking about is Ismail Darvesh's Talash Nama, translated as Quest by V. Ramaswamy. It's a book that flows like a grand river, bringing life and life worlds into sharp focus, very gentle and understanding of the follies of human beings, but also sensitive to the our quest to actually better ourselves, to strive for what we think is virtuous. A great read. Atarapandit's Hurda is the second work that we're talking about. It's a book that deals with disappearance, rape, murder, investigation, and then reportage on it. And what we have is moral duplicity, moral ambiguity, and criminality of each character. And that gives us a novel which is riddled with deep ambiguity about human nature and human vocation. Also, something that tells us about what we do when we are faced with everyday evil.
The first book that I'm going to talk about is Chronicle of an Hour and a Half by Saharu Nusaiba Kannahari. This book, a debut novel by the author, is absolutely unputdownable. And as the title promises, a series of events over an hour and a half cascade into a brutal mob lynching of a young man called Burhan over an extramarital affair. Saharu approaches his writing like a seasoned storyteller, and in this slim book of 200 pages, there are almost 14 or 15 different narrators. They are illiterate village women, dogmatic men, and young children, and yet he deals each narrative with brevity and sensitivity. The author questions human frailty through love, morality, misogyny, and this book makes for an absolutely unsettling, brilliant read. The second book that I wanted to speak to you about is Sanatan by Sharan Kumar Limbale. This expressive novel speaks to us about the life of Bhimnak Mahar and his community, a world that is beset with apathy, with discrimination and inhuman abuse. The original in Marathi is translated into English by Paramita Sengupta, and it brings to the fore the socio-cultural struggle of the Dalits and their inhuman, discriminated life in the margins of the society. The book takes us to the daily life of the Mahars, of how they have to signal their arrival with sticks and bells, of how they have to beg for food, clean villages, guard the upper caste, and yet be treated like nothing, worse than animals. Sharan Kumar Limbale's writing in this book is Dalit writing at its finest. It's thought-provoking, creative, and definitely a subtle critique of our times.
Lorenzo Searches for the Meaning of Life by Upamanyu Chatterjee is the story of a young man called Lorenzo who visits a Benedictine monastery and decides to become a monk. This is a spiritual saga and one of those books where you can use this term without sounding pretentious, of a person who's decided to devote himself singularly to a spiritual and religious cause, and the book does a kind of emotional moment-to-moment tracking of his interior life and the slow kind of changes in the vicissitudes of it as the outer world changes, and the tremendous drama of a quiet, silent interior life and the outer world is riveting for the most part. We feel very assured and very privy to this elliptical, sparse life in a monastery and a completely different tenor and cadence of life in Bangladesh. I personally loved the book and endorse it. Okay, so The One-Legged by Satyajit Bhattacharya, this conjures up an enchanting world of folk horror that reminds one of a kind of a grandmother's story. It's a world of quasi-supernatural entities that might or might not be hovering on treetops. It's also a world that entwines themes of grief and horror and deep unresolved unconscious issues that kind of manifest itself in animistic ecological uncanny. This is a riveting book that I sort of inhaled at one go and is written with a kind of taut, sparse skill that really keeps you really very hooked. So it has all the frisson that's required for a book of this genre, and I would fully endorse it for the long list.
The first book I'm going to talk about is Avadut Dongre's Leaf, Water and Flow. This book stood out to me as a literary work that is rich in its thematic content and character complexity. Although it is a translated work, I think it beautifully retains the lyricism and the softness of the original work, which I really enjoyed. And I think its strength lies in its ability to bring together personal narratives with some very complex socio-political themes, its evocative imagery and symbolicism, and its philosophical and emotional depth. I think it just does not tell us a story, but it also nudges us to invite critical thought and reflection. And I think it is a significant contribution to contemporary South Asian literature. I really enjoyed it. The next book I'm going to talk about is Maria, Just Maria, written by Sandhya Mary. Again, a beautiful, poetic book, also beautifully translated. It is a book about defiance, it's a book about resilience, and it's also a book about self-exploration. The character that Maria is layered, she is complex, and the book deals with it with a lot of empathy, and her character is relatable and it's emotionally compelling. It particularly makes us question the norms and the standards around mental health and what normalcy is. So it's a fascinating read, and I think the translation also retains the beauty that the original book holds. I think it's a very significant contribution to the South Asian as well as the global literary scene, especially when it comes to women's writing and women's writing around mental health. And I really enjoyed this book.
Congratulations to the authors and translators to making it on the long list for the JCB Prize for Literature 2024. The long-listed books are available online and at bookstores nearest to you.